Finding treasure in one of the poorest places on earth is no easy task. Search high into the mountains and deep into the clouds of the Guatemalan forest, and you will find God's treasures. Take a seat at their table and experience their hospitality, and you too will be transformed. The indigenous Mayan people of Guatemala have lived through civil war, genocide, and abandonment from their own government. The people of the village of Aguacate have learned to rely on their belief in the Lord and their love for each other in order to move forward each day. The Mayan people have embraced their faith, weaving orthodoxy into the fabric of their lives. The village of Aguacate breeds a strong communal atmosphere. However, poverty, hunger, and poor health are obstacles that attack the people of Guatemala on a daily basis. Look closely, and you will find the treasures of the Church.
The problem was that people were dying of preventable diseases because of their lifestyle, the way they had lived for many generations. They were becoming ill, and there was no resource to cure them of these illnesses.
Una de las causas principales en la comunidad.
One of the principal causes of health in the community is the poverty of the people. They are poorly nourished and have very few resources. They become very vulnerable to illness.
The daily life of the people is a struggle.
They're all subsistence farmers, so they eat what they grow.
They have to go out into their fields, cultivate their crops.
It's a very, very difficult life. Even kids from 6th grade on are working in the fields. Most of the children only go through 6th grade because that's the only thing that's paid for by the government.
Trabajando en el campo y las mujeres.
The women are often in the household cooking, taking care of the children, and doing all the tasks of the house.
Not just washing dishes and preparing the meals, but slaughtering chickens, going out and bringing the firewood, and the children helping with all of that work all day long.
En la mayoría de las casas.
In the majority of the houses here, there are in every family 7 to 10 people, so there are large families. The people live each day in a very simple way. They eat corn and beans and a few other vegetables that they have grown themselves.
Pues la vida de acá, pues vivimos en un.
We live in a place that does not produce much food, and even though most people work in their own fields, we don't have huge harvest, and it is difficult to live. So oftentimes a lot of our young people leave to find work in other places, like Mexico or the United States.
Entonces toda la gente que vive allí.
Almost all the people here are living a life of sickness. The challenge we have is that we have poor economic conditions here. We don't have possibilities to pay for good care and see a good doctor.
Antes de la clínica, la salud.
Before the clinic came to Aguacate, the health of the people was very bad. We didn't have anyone who could treat us in an area that was close to us. The people would have to travel to find treatment, but often they could not find anyone to attend them.
The nearest clinic was 2 hours away by bus. There's a lot of chronic issues in the village, but they didn't have the money nor the means to get them treated in a proactive way.
Caminar a pie para venir.
People have to walk on foot in order to find a doctor. So many people don't have any place to go to find health care.
So what happened to the village is when someone had a stroke, someone had a heart attack, a baby was being born breech, all these horrible conditions, they would have to pool their money, get on a bus, hope they could get to a hospital in Mexico on time to save their life. More often than not, the young women with difficult births would die on the way to the hospital. The strokes would paralyze them before they got there. Oftentimes they never even made it to the bus.
Even when people are able to go to a hospital to get the money to pay for transportation, when they walk into the hospital here in Guatemala, if they don't have the cash in hand, they'll be turned away.
The problems of healthcare in Guatemala are multiplied many times over in the tiny village of Aguacate.
Cross one border and it seems like your whole world has changed, how much of a difference that a few hundred feet can make.
The condition of the people with regard to their health before the establishment of the clinic was very grave.
Life was a lot harsher. People died of tuberculosis, of asthma, of other diseases that are very preventable.
Anteriormente no podían.
Previously, they could not receive treatment. They would die from illnesses that are very easy to treat, such as diabetes. Before the clinic was here, there simply wasn't any type of treatment for people with diabetes.
Before the clinic was here in Aguacate, I had a lot of problems that I did not understand. I was always thirsty all the time. I was always drinking, but it did not matter. I always felt dried out.
I also used to have a lot of pain in my body, a lot of pain in my bones. It felt like a truck going over on me, was pressing on me.
I am suffering from a disease called asthma. I did not know all of my health issues were coming from asthma until the doctors here told me.
Los niños padecían mucho diarrea por mucho tiempo.
The children would suffer from diarrhea for a long time. Many people who would suffer from basic things like fevers would not be able to get any help in the village.
There are some issues that we don't understand, like sometimes the children get headaches and problems with their head. That seems to kill the children, and we don't understand what's happening.
Entonces toda la gente que vive allí.
All the people who live here have a lot of illnesses, but the women here have many issues.
There are approximately 30 births a month. There are 7 women who are the midwives who help to deliver these children.
The midwives have their hands full. They're older women. They're kind of elderly themselves, and they don't have proper medical training.
There are complications with pregnancies at times, and this creates a really serious problem.
At times, the mothers die on the road while in difficult labor because the hospitals are far away.
The lack of a viable healthcare alternative has failed the people of the Northern Highlands at their most vulnerable time. In turn, ailments whose cures are relatively simple would persist for many years, placing the population at great risk.
Un caso de una señora de una aldea vecina.
There was a woman from a neighboring village who had a terrible fungal growth on her foot and leg. Her leg was at risk of being cut.
We said, "How long have you had that?" She said, 16 years. We were able to give them medication, and a year later, it's practically gone.
Otra persona de ahí de la comunidad se le estaba pudriendo un dedo.
Another person from the community had an infected finger. It was so bad it was gangrenous and coming to the point where it may have had to be cut off. She was given the proper treatments and was cured completely of that affliction.
Because I didn't have any idea what was happening to me, I found different types of medicines that I would take. I didn't know what they were. I just hoped they would help my condition.
So the problem that many people faced before the clinic was here is that they would go and buy medicines or even sometimes needles to inject themselves with different kinds of medicines or IV fluids, but without knowing what they were doing.
The people do the best to treat themselves, and sometimes that means people don't get better and even die.
The Mayan population has been left to survive on its own since the time of the Spanish invasion. During the 36-year-long Civil War, many Mayan families were being slaughtered indiscriminately. Many were forced to leave their farms and seek shelter in the mountains. The population in the Northern Highlands is difficult to reach because of its geographic isolation. The non-Mayan Spanish-speaking Guatemalan government has no incentive to care for these people, which compounds the historical mistrust the population has towards the federal government.
During the Civil War, a lot of the Mayans were driven up into the mountains off their farms, and that's kind of where they are now. They're out of sight, out of mind as far as the government's concerned.
Uno de los problemas principales en Guatemala.
One of the main problems in Guatemala is that the Mayan people have been abandoned from their own government, especially in the western part of the country where the border with Mexico is. There is virtually no government involvement.
They're just not well treated people. They're not considered legitimate citizens of the country. There are those people that are out there and nobody cares about them.
In Guatemala, because it's an agrarian country, if you don't have land, you have nothing. You have no means of earning an income, supporting your family, and so the people were essentially enslaved to the landowners. The village is a very wet and muddy place. It rains frequently there. It's so high up in the mountains that clouds sit on it. The climate can limit what they can grow. If it's too cold or too rainy or too dry, their crops don't come in properly.
All the people in the community are strong. Even though they don't have money, they will go out in the forest for different herbs and plants that they can eat in order to avoid being sick. They will share the herbs among each other. They want to encourage each other. They want to show compassion for each other.
The Mayan people are very resilient, very strong physically, because their lives have not been easy.
Their world is the church and Christ. Everything that they do centers around that focal point. So when we're praying and worshiping with them, we experience an energy that's hard for us to fathom.
There was a time after much prayer and fasting, a vision came to us. The vision was we were going to have a priest. We believed this, but did not know how it would be possible. We simply had to trust that it would come to pass. Then soon after, Father Andres appeared in our community.
The Orthodox Church in Guatemala has found an open door because of the interest of former Catholic priest, Father Andres Giron, in transitioning into Orthodoxy with the many Mayan villages that he helped to either build or direct. He was the leader of a movement. It was called the Campesino movement. These are the farmers.
Mucho tiempo así sin sacramento.
We spent a lot of time without sacraments. Before Father Andreas, we did not have a priest here for 15 years. We had no one to baptize our children, no one to commune us. Then Father Andreas came here, and he put us back on our feet.
To watch him as he would move among the people here in Guatemala was very inspiring. The people would flock to him. After services like the Divine Liturgy, he would go out into the crowd with open arms, seeking people to pray for, and people would come up to him and he would hug them and hold them in incredible love for the people here in Guatemala.
To speak of Father Andres is to speak of a true father. To speak of Father Andres is to speak about a leader in the fight, someone who fought with us and was the first among us to struggle.
It hurt him when he saw suffering of any kind, and he felt compelled to help whoever it was that was suffering, whether it be physically, spiritually, emotionally. He was there for everyone.
And he used to carry around medicines in his pockets, in his bags, when he would visit communities to baptize people and to celebrate the Divine Liturgy.
One day, Father Andres said to us, he gave us a promise. He said just as Christ came to heal people physically, not just spiritually, he would make sure that these sheep of Christ in Aguacate would not continue sick. He would do everything possible to make sure that one day we had a clinic.
The Orthodox Church follows a holistic approach. When we're trying to reach out to people, we not only reach out to them in terms of their spiritual needs, we also work with them in terms of the necessities they have in their lives for quality health care, education, things that are not often available to people in countries like Guatemala.
The clinic was a dream of Father Andres for many years because he loved his people so much. He wanted to help them in every way he could.
Archbishop Athenagoras of Mexico, who is one of the bishops of the Ecumenical Patriarchate in Constantinople, had a foundation which he had established, One World, One Community, and they provided us with the startup money to build the clinic.
Medical teams arrive in Guatemala a few times a year. News of the team's arrival spreads not only through Aguacate, but also through all the region.
When I've seen medical professionals who come here in mission teams, I notice sort of two complementary reactions that they have. First of all, people feel overwhelmed. They feel overwhelmed by the need when the doors get sort of flung open with huge crowds of people that burst into the clinic seeking medical care, and they'll wait for hours and hours to get their turn.
I was really amazed at the long line of people that I saw, the villagers that came from far to the clinic. I was somewhat anxious because I didn't speak the language, and I was very concerned about how to communicate with the villagers in terms of being able to treat their illnesses.
I'm just swamped. I'm overwhelmed with dental emergencies, basically. People that come to me with infection, and they walk many miles, many hours, and they wait here all day and sometimes have to sleep here overnight.
As the days go by on their teams, they start to have another reaction, which is a sense of confidence and inspiration in the small ways that they're able to help people.
Eventually, I felt a lot more comfortable because I realized we were on a mission. There were a lot of patients, we needed to help them, and that's what it was all about.
To my surprise, we saw many more patients than I had anticipated or that I ever thought that I could handle. I remember 155 extractions in 2 days, which was far, far beyond anything that I had ever done which I thought was my capability.
I was really surprised at the number of patients that we really could help as a result of Brothers Brother organization that gave many medications. They provided patients with a lot of treatments and options for treatment.
The dental program began in earnest even before the clinic was built.
The general response to dental care in the village is if my teeth hurt, pull them out.
They come in with these cracked and broken teeth. Some of them have blackened because they've been without dental care for such a long time.
At 15, 16, 17 years old, these handsome young men and these pretty young ladies are missing their front teeth because those are usually the first ones that go.
They've endured this and they're so stoic about it, and they are so trusting of the dentists and the care that they're giving them.
So we went from working on a table, doing just extractions, to getting 2 complete operatories and being able to do restorative work, saving teeth on a lot of these younger people, to the 3rd stage, which is the prevention stage. And that's the key, and that's my ultimate goal.
Every class in the school gets fluoride treatment, and they have been now for 2.5 years, and we're beginning to see the results of that. We're beginning to see the dental health of the children improving.
And that would just be a groundbreaking innovation for the people here to prevent the disease in the first place. And that not only goes for dental disease, but that's very much parallels diabetes, hypertension, and the other metabolic diseases that we see arising in epidemic form.
Many of the health issues that prey on the villagers are a direct result of the infrastructure, diet, and environment of the area.
I seem to see a lot of common illnesses such as diabetes, hypertension. There was quite a bit of asthma. I suspect that was due to the wood-burning stoves that were in their homes.
This creates a lot of smoke in a small space in their little homes.
These children simply spend their whole lives there at their mom's side with all the smoke. So kids here in Guatemala very often grow up with asthma from something as basic as the smoke coming out of their kitchen stove.
Many patients came presenting with headaches. A very similar complaint would be musculoskeletal aches and pain. They varied from infectious problems such as parasites and protozoans and inflammatory conditions of the bowel.
One of the first things we saw a lot of was abdominal cramps and diarrhea.
Es muy común acá, y sobre todo en los niños la diarrea.
Above all, the situation with the children can be attributed to the water. There is still a big problem with diarrhea and parasites.
We had the water tested. The water does have E. coli in it.
Tal líquido que tomamos.
The water that we drink is contaminated. That is a project we need to concern ourselves with to help the people.
I think that clean and purified water would be the key to alleviating so many of the illnesses that we saw at the clinic and we're treating these patients for. Of course, that creates a lot of need for resources and expertise to be able to purify their water system.
Contributions of money and medical equipment from around the world have helped bring modern medical solutions to the village.
Each time a team comes, they are able to bring new resources to the clinic. Our team in particular brought a hemoglobin A1C machine, the urinalysis machine.
So there were a bunch of patients that had diabetes, and to diagnose it, we would do a blood glucose test and to see what their sugar was of that day. And if it was very high, that means that they're most likely to have diabetes, but that also could mean that they just had a lot of sugar in their coffee, for example, in the morning. We would do a hemoglobin A1C analysis to test their glucose throughout a 3-month period, which wouldn't affect their diet and their exercise at all. If that came back as positive, then we would know that the patient had diabetes, and we would put them on diabetic medication and explain to them what their diagnosis was and what they can do to help prevent some symptoms of it.
I discovered that my blood sugar all of the time was 570. I was diabetic, and I didn't know that until the clinic came here. If the clinic had not been built here in Aguacate, I would have already died.
Medical teams come home with a sense of satisfaction from improving the overall health of the community.
Well, I got to clean a foot. It was caused by just always having moisture in the air and a fungus that grew on her foot for about 12 years. I had to clean her wound and then applied an antifungal lotion, and then we just taught her husband what he was going to have to do at their house to just completely heal her issue.
Now I can walk a lot better. I also can stand up and cook. I also am able to leave the house more. That lets me do the things I enjoy doing and the things I need to do. Most importantly, I am able to go to church more, which is the most essential.
Ese remedio se me quitó esa enfermedad. Ahorita siento.
This medicine took away my asthma. I feel so much better now. I don't have problems when I walk and when I'm working. I can do these things without any issues.
I have seen how profound an effect this clinic has had on people's lives.
A 2-year-old came in with a febrile seizure,
and it got so high that he actually started seizing up.
And if the team wouldn't have been here at this time, he probably would have died.
They were able to bring his fever down.
And seeing a child seizing is really difficult, but at the same time, watching everyone remain calm and able to treat the child was really heartwarming.
The dental team has had some remarkable successes.
This young lady came into the clinic. She says, I want all these teeth pulled. And they were pretty badly decayed and pretty ugly, and obviously they pained her. So the dentist sat her down on the chair and numbed her up and commenced to fix every one of her front teeth. There's a 17-year-old girl who had these ugly decayed teeth in front, and she walked out of the clinic with a beautiful smile and happy as a lark. They didn't even know you could do something like that. All they knew was her teeth hurt and she wanted them pulled.
This little guy came in with these terribly infected teeth and massive infection, and I had to inject the anesthetic in an area that was already swollen and infected. He was just such a brave little guy, and he smiled and tolerated the whole procedure. I did a bunch of extraction, packed him up with gauze, and when he was ready to go, he gave me a big hug. It brought tears. It brings tears now just thinking about it.
We take hundreds and hundreds of toothbrushes down, and when we first started that program, it was kind of interesting because we'd look around the village and we would see the children teaching their parents how to brush their teeth, because some of the parents had never used a toothbrush. So those fundamental things that we take for granted, they didn't either have the funds to buy these things. You know, do you buy a toothbrush for your family, or do you buy food for your family?
Teams are able to come to Aguacate only a few times a year. For this reason, the goal has always been to train indigenous medical providers who would be able to care for the population on a full-time basis.
A very key element here is making this clinic self-sustaining. We can only come down a few times a year from the States. We can recruit volunteers to come as well. It still would be very limited in terms of time here where patients could be seen.
The clinic has been able to hire a full-time nurse to take care of the day-to-day needs of the community and to facilitate care plans for patients that the clinic teams have established. The prospects for a more permanent dental care solution have taken a positive turn. The San Carlo Dental School in Guatemala City requires its new graduates to spend a year in a rural area before they go into private practice.
So we'll have a full-time dentist here, and we're hoping to just continue that on a rotating basis.
The future of medicine and of health in Guatemala really depends on the presence of indigenous healthcare workers out in the villages of Guatemala.
It would be so important to have an indigenous doctor there full-time that is able to speak their language, Chuk as well as Spanish, to be able to communicate better their medical problems and their needs and to have better follow-up care.
The impact that one doctor could have in a village and in many villages in that area is hard to calculate, but it will be very significant.
I think it's very important for a lot of these patients with chronic diseases such as hypertension and diabetes to be coming back on a regular basis. That is how we're going to prevent their disease from causing other diseases within them.
Having more indigenous people come into the medical field is just a breakthrough for this area.
There was a teenage girl who was one of the clinical health workers. Her name was Juana. With very minimal training, her and 2 other clinical health workers gave most of the care. They pulled teeth, they gave injections, they did stitches, they did sutures when someone got cut, and that was kind of the extent of the care.
Un maestro nos puso a hacer una dramatización y
a teacher had us take part in a play. My part in the play was a doctor. After I acted the part of the doctor, I started to have a desire to help with the health care of my village. That idea of being a doctor never left me. Later on in school, I started thinking about studying and what it would take to be involved with helping with people's health.
So she was working slowly on her high school education, along with working on the farm, along with being a clinical health worker in the village.
The fact that a young girl from that village where education is limited for women even had an aspiration to become a doctor, that's remarkable in itself.
So she wanted to take the test, and she took the test and she passed the test.
We have gotten a scholarship for her from the Orthodox Christian Mission Center, and she is now attending a university there.
And she's at the top of her class right now.
This will be a great blessing for the community. This young woman, who has always wanted to be a doctor from a very young age, is now fulfilling her dream and has that potential to do so.
This is a country where the majority of doctors who graduate from the medical schools in Guatemala stay in the cities. But there are millions of people who don't live in the cities, who live way out in Guatemala, and the doctors don't want to go there. So in order to bring the country as a whole forward, there really has to be people who are willing to go out to these parts of Guatemala to work. And not merely for a short time when medical teams come, but to train people from those areas to continue the work.
She wants to head the clinic when she graduates. It's a 7-year program, and I'm sure she will be back and she'll be the head doctor in the clinic and running the clinic.
Pues primeramente Dios, yo tengo muchos planes, yo sé que no.
God willing, I have many plans. My own hope is to become a doctor, to become somebody who can care for the people where I am from, speaking the language that we share together and having complete trust in one another.
So this is almost unprecedented for a small Mayan village in the middle of nowhere.
Going from what we started with to a full-time clinic with full-time staffing is just a quantum leap in healthcare and the quality of life for these people here.
That's the way that this country is going to move forward. When people who are indigenous, who speak the language of the people, those are the people who can impact this country far into the future.
Mission teams are only one component for change in Guatemala. The emergence of a strong local Orthodox clergy proved to be the engine that has made a difference in these small Mayan villages.
Father Evangelos and the priests influenced all the assistance, improvements, and projects that we have had here. If there would not have been a priest, who would have led all of this? Who would have made this possible? So it is very important to have their leadership. We are very thankful to have them here leading these projects.
They've been trailblazers. They've really tried to break barriers to make progress in their own country.
Creo que es algo muy especial.
I believe that this is something very special, a joy in identifying with the people. They want to see their priest involved with them in their lives. I feel a joy and happiness in being with them as they do with me. The church allows them to be free of their tensions of poverty and the various problems that they have. They express a tremendous joy in worship towards their Creator.
With only a handful of ordained priests to cover a vast area, the seminary and the young seminarians have become an essential arm of support for progress among the local people.
I think it's clear why they're seminarians, because I think the reason that they're able to live their lives the way they do is because they really see God in everyone and in everything.
Through the seminary and the future candidates for the priesthood, the clergy that are now serving, the catechists who are teaching in each of the villages, we're beginning to see this shifting momentum toward a deeper understanding and embrace of the Orthodox Church.
We have the leadership here in Guatemala of Father Michael, who is the vicar, and under him 4 priests who are working here in Guatemala. And one of those priests is Father Athenagoras, who has under his care 70 different communities here in Guatemala.
You look at Father Athenagoras and you see that joy. You see the joy of the Lord in him, the joy of the kingdom. What else is there? He is so open. He has no walls that prevent him from judging or being critical of anybody. He just sees you and he smiles and he loves you.
They're the ones who day and night are struggling to move the communities forward, and we're so thankful to have their presence and their partnership here in Guatemala as the true leaders of this work.
We're seeing this embracing of the church, deepening in the faith, understanding the teachings of the church, and trying to live them out in their own personal lives.
Siempre ha pasado dificultades.
There have been many difficulties that this faith has helped me through. The truth is, I am proud to be part of the Orthodox Church, because without that faith, I would be lost.
We are now a part of a legitimate church, a true church. Before we were criticized, and we were alone. But now we have somewhere to stand in our faith.
We are showing the people in these places that they are part of a bigger church, that they belong to an international church that cares about them, and a church that is there to support them.
A ustedes nos están apoyando mucho como guatemaltecos.
You have come to Guatemala to help us. We are so thankful when we see people from the Orthodox Church coming to share with us as brothers and sisters.
They were told by those around them that their church was nothing, that the sacraments were nothing, that they had no real history. But when they see that the connection is there with the primitive Orthodox Church, the Church of Christ and the Apostles, this changes their way of thinking. And they realize that yes, they can stand on that ground and they can proclaim their faith because it is the very faith of Christ itself.
Their faith is vibrant and fervent. It humbles us to see how alive they are in their faith and how much they love God.
In the midst of this abject poverty, you feel the presence of Christ and the Holy Spirit, not only in yourself, but in the community. There's an energy that rises from among the people that lifts you.
Recuerdo las palabras de nuestro fundador, Padre Andrés.
I remember the words of our Father Andreas. He wanted us to leave footprints of the good works we do among the people. We want to structure the church in every way possible so that we have good works together. As St. James wrote, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also."
Our life on earth is temporal. We're not here for that long. But if we can leave something behind, a legacy, leave our footsteps in the mud of Guatemala, that is a tremendous blessing to our soul.
I really hope that I've left my footprints here. The opportunity that I've had to come here to this clinic has allowed me to make an impact on these people's lives.
This isn't a place that I realize that you can just go just once. I want to go back. I want to do everything that I can for these people.
It's making me very motivated to really work hard and to really fulfill the opportunities I've been given in my life so that hopefully I can come back down here, help these people.
It really draws you back. Almost every medical team that's been there, I get emails from them all the time wanting to know how so-and-so is, how so-and-so is, want to know how the clinic's going and so on, because once you've been there, you kind of connect to these people. They're so warm and gracious.
The experience that I had in Aguacate was one of the most amazing experiences I've had in my life.
When you go to a foreign country, when you see people that are different than yourself, and you feel distant or different, and then you make the human connection and you find the common humanity and maybe this brotherhood of man, it's an extremely powerful experience and a very, very life-changing experience.
It fills your heart. It makes what you do worthwhile.
I would also encourage others that have any type of medical background, but it doesn't even have to be medical, to experience this, to do it with your family. You will never forget that experience.
We want to leave a legacy of the church and of the life of Christ in the most remote parts of the country that have been abandoned, neglected, or written off by the world. But if we can establish the church there to show that Christ cares even for the least of the brethren in these very remote areas, it's a way of affirming that the church is alive and well and doing the work that it's supposed to be doing.
We have a responsibility to gain a better understanding of what's going on in the world, of what the conditions are around the world, and what we can do individually and collectively to alleviate some of this suffering.
They don't have much, but what they have, they give to one another, and that is their love for one another. They also try to help each other in any way possible.
I just think it's amazing the way they're able to endure the conditions that they do.
And I think that goes back to their sense of community, that it's so strong. They really value every single person in the village.
I just pray that they continue to keep their hearts in that right place and they continue to appreciate what they do have, but hopefully that they can get more, that we can bring them more.
I wanted to create a project that would empower the women, that would give them opportunities to earn an income and to be able to manage their lives a little bit better without being dependent. I established a sewing business for them where we sew ecclesiastical garments, priests' vestments, altar boy robes, and other ecclesiastical things. And this way it gives them an avenue where they can earn money, and then we can offer a quality product to our customers at a reasonable price.
I wanted to do something more than going down in a medical mission team. I wanted to leave my lasting imprint in Guatemala. I started a drive to collect soccer balls through my church and also through Chatham University, which is the school where I play soccer at. When I just took a step back and just watched all of them playing with the new soccer balls and how excited they were and how all the girls were just so excited. That is gonna stay with me throughout my entire life, and I'm definitely never gonna forget it. And I really hope that that memory for those kids will always remain in their hearts as well.
All of us, when we see someone in need, when we see a child who's fallen down and is crying, we all rush to pick up the child, to help someone who's in need when they're right in front of us. And I really believe that people across the world want to help. People want to make a difference in the world, but it's simply overwhelming to think on the scale of the world or all of the organizations in this world that are trying to make a difference. So I really pray that people who hear about the clinic in Aguacate, who see the faces of the children here in Guatemala, will feel in their heart, here is a place where I can make a difference, where all of our desires to leave a mark on this world and to help people can be brought back to earth in the face of a single person. And that we can have that love and that friendship even with the people right here in Aguacate who become our family members and our dearly beloved brothers and sisters.
You can be a friend by going there and being their friend and helping in some way. Or you can be a friend by contributing to the clinic, because there's many, many things that we need in the clinic. We're just scratching the surface now. We're just beginning to find the kinds of medical equipment we need to support these people. So being a friend and contributing to the clinic through the Holy Cross Mission Fund would be a fantastic way to help the clinic, to be a friend to somebody in Guatemala who you don't even know. but we can give you feedback, we can tell you stories about the people, you will know where your money went, and it's a phenomenal cause to help people who have nobody else to be their friend right now.
Lift the stone, and you will see me. Cut the wood in two, and there I will be. This idea of the presence of Christ found in the little things of life, in the little activities and things that we do on a daily basis. The presence of Christ in the ordinary parts of life is really something that's very much part of the mission. Because when we go into these little places, it might be just the smile of a child. It might be helping a woman who's expecting to give birth to a child. It might be healing a woman that has a horrible rash on her skin that she hasn't been able to be rid of for many years. It might be just walking through a village and seeing the people and how they live and the struggles that they endure. All of those little things are little biddings from Christ. Christ is in all of that. He's calling to all of us through the mouths, the eyes, the ears, the lives of these people. And Christ can be found in all of this. We don't have to just be praying in a church. The holiness can be found even in the simplest settings of life. Everything can be holy and is holy if we have the eyes to see it.
I simply want to thank God because I have already seen the fulfillment of all of our visions and all of our dreams, which we have had for 70 years through the Civil War. The hopes and dreams that we had are beginning to come true, and now I can hear the call of God and go into His kingdom to be with Him.
The work is not done in Guatemala. This is only the beginning. It begins with hundreds of thousands of souls who have sought out the Orthodox Christian faith and continues with a pledge to provide them with basic health care. The potential for one of the largest awakenings of Orthodoxy in centuries is alive in Central America. There are many obstacles standing in the path, poverty and health care chief among them. With your help and support, we can overcome these challenges and offer assistance to our brothers and sisters who are in such desperate need.